Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
For centuries, ancient cultures knew the secrets to longevity, vitality, and healing. Now, modern science is catching up. Ageless Blueprint is a podcast that will reveal the modern secrets of better health and a better life. Join Dr. Eldred Taylor here today and every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. As together we discover the secrets to better health through science and spirituality. A better life with Ageless Blueprint starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is a cold Wednesday in Atlanta. We're actually expecting some snow this weekend. And you may notice that I don't have my usual white coat on with my spiritual MD, and I'm the hormone doctor, because this was going to be a little bit different. I've been doing Ageless Blueprint here for about a year now. And I came up with that name, and I really didn't know why or what, but it just felt right at the time. So I've been doing podcasts and doing the school and doing all kinds of things. And I finally realized what I was trying to do is I was trying to show how people could be ageless at any age. And the Ageless Blueprint, and I'll just give you what I have figured out is the key to life, is are you able to adapt to the ever-changing environment? Okay, that is what longevity is all about. Can you adapt? Now, so the dinosaurs, did they become extinct because they were lazy or because they weren't powerful enough, they weren't big enough? No, they just couldn't adapt to the changing environment. And that's the thing that all animals have to do. And we're animals or mammals or whatever. You have to be able to adapt to the environment. And your body, if it is allowed, can adapt to almost any situation. But it has to be a stress, and then it has to be a recovery, because whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Okay, so stress is not the enemy. It's just the prolonged stress is the problem. So let's go to the slide. So we're going to talk about the biology of high performance. So, I feel like can we make these bigger? Yeah. All right. So the biology of high performance. So, I feel like I've been a high performer. I've tried to be. My parents, hey, you can do anything and all this. So, I wanted to be a doctor. That's high performance. I have to do well in school. I have to do all this stuff. All right. So then also I, did my residency. I'm going to do an OB/GYN. I had to be a high performer. So then I had to be in my practice. I had to be high performance, high performance, high performance. And then what you realize is that I couldn't do OB/GYN anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. It took me too long to recover. So I had to adapt. So I did functional medicine. Then I became a speaker, and then I had to adapt because traveling was too much. And then I had to adapt to see how can I still be a high performer at 65. And so I'm just going to take you through all of those steps and how you have to be aware that if you want to maintain your high performance, you have to understand the biology of high performance. So I want you to understand why resilience fails and why standard labs miss it, because people are going to the doctor trying to figure out, why can't I perform like I used to? Why can't I lose weight like I used to? Why can't I handle my job like I used to? And so they get all these tests and it gets missed. And so I want to show you how you can restore your adaptive capacity. And at 65, I'm trying to learn it and I'm trying to live it. I'm trying to maintain my high performance at 65 and past, because I've seen patients who have been high performers all their life and they can't wait till they're 60 or 65. They're going to retire. And then they find out they don't have the energy that they thought they were going to have to enjoy their retirement. All right. So That's what Ageless Blueprint is all about. Okay. And I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to tell you at the end, the key to longevity is your ability to adapt to an ever changing environment. And with AI and all of this stuff, everything is changing so fast. Can you adapt? And I'm going to show you the biology that will help you adapt. All right, so let's go to the next one. So a lot of people, they get to this point and it's like, is this just how I'm going to feel for the rest of my life? Maybe I'm successful, but I'm less resilient. That's what happened to me when I was doing OB. Is that if I got up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and did a surgery, oh wow, I did a C-section. Oh, it was so exhilarating. But after a while, after I got into my 40s, I could still do it, but I couldn't recover. Okay. And even when I started speaking, as that started to wear on me, I was responsible. I would go, but I was less sharp. I couldn't come up with the interesting, little stories and stuff. And then I was still performing, but I was totally exhausted. I'm going to show you this whole life cycle here. And it all started in my 40s or 50s. My output remained high, but the effort required to sustain it has doubled. Recovery takes longer and the emotional fuse is shorter. That's what I'm saying. When you haven't recovered, now everything irritates you. Your job that used to you enjoy, now you hate it, okay? Because you have not been able to adapt and your biology hasn't kept up with the environment yet. So let's go to the next slide. So, I've been to Africa and you see these animals. And the first book I read about stress was Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's very simple, you guys. You're here to try and survive, to try and have experiences and survive. So here's what the zebras do. Okay, so they sit around, and all these animals do. All they do is eat and they sleep. They eat and they sleep. They go get water. They eat and sleep until a predator shows up. All right. So they're doing parasympathetic is rest and digest. And I'll talk about that later. But anyway, so what they do is they sit around, and if they see a predator, what happens? They have to go into the sympathetic mode. They either have to fight or flight. Okay. So here's what happens. So they see a predator. They make a decision. Am I going to run and try and avoid the predator, or am I going to fight it? So what happens is it's a 5 or 10 minute race, it's a 5 or 10 minute fight, and one of two things will happen. Either the zebra will win the race and they will win the fight. And either way, the sympathetic drive is over with, they go back to eating and sleeping. All right. Or it will lose the fight or lose the race. And now that sympathetic tone or that stress has killed the zebra and the stress response is over. So either way, the stress response is short-lived. All right. The problem in humans, we initiate that stress response 24/7. We don't have a stress and then recover and then we adapt. You know what those zebras do? They get sharper, they get stronger because they've avoided or they went through a fight now. So whatever kills you will make you stronger. Okay. Whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger. But it can also kill you. So the stress can kill you if it's a prolonged stress. All right. So humans act like the predators around 24/7 because your body sees stress, whether it's emotional, environmental, any type of disruption in homeostasis, your body sees it as a stress. So if you're worried about something, if you had an injury that you hadn't recovered from, if you're in a toxic environment, there's mold in your house or whatever, your body sees that as a stress. And if you don't identify that, and if you don't try to adapt to it and recover from it, it will kill you. Stress will kill you. All right. So now what I want you to understand is burnout is not a weakness. Okay. So the myth is that burnout is a failure of mindset. It is a lack of discipline or mental toughness. And that's what happens. You become depressed and you become down on yourself because you can't do what you used to do. You can't lose weight like you used to. You can't perform your job like you used to. You don't feel like you can be a parent like you used to. But the reality is that burnout is a broken adaptive switch. It is a physiological recovery debt. So I'm going to show you this in more detail, but cortisol should look like this. So remember this rhythm right here? So this is a daily cortisol rhythm. This is you go to sleep, you recover, you build up your energy supply. Now you wake up in the morning, you have all of this energy, you go through your day, you work, you do what you need to do. Around lunchtime, you eat, you get a little bit more energy. Now you're tired, you go to sleep, you recover, all of the energy from what you ate and what you did, it's all incorporated, and now it's a new day, and here you go, you're ready to go again. That's what's supposed to happen. And this is a cortisol curve. Your cortisol is your stress hormone. So every day there are some stressors. So you should have this flow of energy. All right. But when you run 24/7, when you think there's a predator, or when there's stress all the time, initially cortisol goes up here. You can only do that for so long. Then it starts to flatten out. And now this is your energy supply for the day. You cannot be a high performer when your cortisol is like this. So I want to show you, this is how it works. Now, this is probably how I was as an intern when I was going through medical school. This is what happens when you're young. You can go to school, you can work, you can party, you can do you can do all these things, misuse your body because you've got all of this cortisol. You're pushing yourself. But I want to show you, this is a 54-year-old woman. She doesn't want to be like this. All right. But this is how it starts. And this is corporate America. Hey, push, push, push. You need to work. You need to stay late. You need to work hard. And you can do this for a certain amount of time. All right. But then this is what happens. And I want to show you, these are patients that I've seen in the last month. This is this year. So most of the time people come to my office after they've had all of these tests, all of these different tests to see why their gut doesn't work, why their brain doesn't work. They've been to all of these specialists. Then they finally come to me and I look at what's upstream. What caused it? That stress connection that I told you, we wrote that book because 75 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress-related complaints or disorders. So this is 95% of my patients, more or less. They all have these disrupted curves. Now, all I want you to see is that green is normal, and you see what's going on here. All of these curves are disrupted. They're low, they're irregular. So you don't have this normal supply of energy during the day to get up, get your kids ready, go to work, perform at work, come home, make dinner. You just don't have it. And you fill in this gap with eating, with carbohydrates, because you're trying to fill up this energy gap. So you have all these cravings to get through the day: coffee, chocolate, donuts, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks. Starbucks is $1 billion company, I believe, because of this. So this is not rare. And if you don't intervene somewhere during this, this is the end result. This is a flatland. This is burnout. She has no cortisol. She has no ability to adapt to anything in her life. All right. So this is, and the key is, you need to be aware. You need to be aware that this is not something for you to get depressed about, for you to get anxious about. This is something for you to intervene into so that you can continue to be a high performer. And you don't have to do all I'm not talking about being a high performer, going to medical school and do all this stuff. I'm just saying to be able to perform the the things that you want to do, your personal desires, your what you want in your life. That's high performance. That's the ageless blueprint. Can I recover? Can I take these stressors and help it to make me stronger and don't let it destroy me? And if she hadn't come to me, she would continue this ongoing search. That's why people are going to Facebook groups and they're going to anywhere. They're going to TikTok to listen to me because they can't understand why they can't perform like they used to. Does this make sense to you, Rebel? I always kind of have to double check to make sure I'm making some type of sense. Can you hear me, Rebel?
I do.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I wasn't talking to myself here.
No. I'm sorry. No, but I heard you, but like totally. I was reading the cortisol in the thing. Remember I told you I was taking notes here, like
Oh,
everybody
okay.
should
All
be.
right. Well, good. Well, good. All right. So I just wanted to make sure. So it's a biology problem, and the problem is we haven't exposed people to the test that can show them where they are. And then at the end of this, I'm going to show you that it's a way to correct it, and it's not complicated, and it makes sense. Your body is so logical. It really is. And so if it's logical, you can understand it. So this is what we're going to talk about. Cortisol is not the villain. Cortisol is capacity. So you need that normal flow. Now, when I was in medical school and all that stuff, it was probably really high. I didn't know how to test my cortisol then, but it gave me focus and drive and adaptability and emotion. Oh man, I could do all of that stuff. I could recover from getting up in the middle of the night. It was great when I needed it. Okay. And you can do that for a certain amount of time. It's just like football players. I don't care what goes on. Eventually, these football players cannot perform at the highest level. And they do all kinds of things to make sure that they can perform at the highest level. They train 24/7. They do all of these things. They eat right. They do it just to maintain that high performance. So cortisol is not the problem. It's cortisol without recovery and maintenance. That's the problem. So you don't want cortisol. You want your cortisol to be responsive. You want it to be able to adapt to what the situation is. And I could do it for a while. So health is a rhythm, is not a number. Okay. And that's why we do cortisols. We do a 4-point cortisol so that we can pick up this rhythm. So we want to see how much morning drive do you have? I have patients all the time who say it's hard for me to get out of bed. This is why Starbucks is a billion-dollar company, because a lot of people have a flattened out morning drive. And this is why people who don't have a normal curve drink 5 or 6 cups of coffee during the day, while they're always in the snack room, the break room, getting the donuts and the coffee. And then they get depressed. Why am I doing this? And then you have this evening shutdown where a lot of people, they come home from work and they're useless. And I used to be like that. Okay. So you get this evening shutdown, but here's the key. Do you get the nighttime repair? And that's the problem, is that a lot of times people push themselves and push themselves. And you can actually alter that curve yourself. If you stay up late all the time, your body will change that curve and say, okay, you want to stay up at night? This is how people who work the midnight shift stay up. You can change that curve. Now, the problem is sometimes you can change that curve, and then when you want to change it back, it won't change back. And that's why I tell all people who work the night shift that they should get off the night shift, because your body works in rhythms based on day and night. And at nighttime is when your body repairs itself and recovers. And you have to be able to go through that so that you can make it through the next day. That's when your body is looking for cancer cells. That's when it incorporates all these nutrients so that you can get stronger. So if you don't sleep, you're not going to get stronger from the stress. You are going to break down from the stress. All right, next slide. So that's what I'm showing you, is that high stress for too long breaks the rhythm. Okay. When the curve flattens, you lose your capacity to adapt. Stress hits you harder because you can't continue that rhythm. All right. So that's what happens. You get this high stress, and I'll show you those two extremes, the high one and the low one. Those two cases came in this week. What was today? Yes, this week. So this is not something that I had to search for in my archives to make sure that I showed you some examples. This comes into my office every day. And people are so surprised that you can actually do a test like that, and it really can map out their day. I can look at that curve and I can tell them exactly how they feel during the day. I can tell them when they have the low points, when they have their high points. This governs your daily routine. You need to have a normal amount of cortisol. And when it's like this and not like this, you eventually will have to pay the price. Okay?
We have a question.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
want to know, how do you know when you're stabilizing? I don't know if this is the proper way to say what they're saying. How do you know
Mhm.
when you're stabilizing that cortisol and are on the right track?
Okay, I'm gonna get to that at the end. How do you restore this? Okay, and it's very simple. You have to provide your body what you consumed. Okay, you consumed a lot of energy over a long period of time, so you have to give your body back what it needs to restore the energy. I'll just give you an example. I told you I've been to Africa and all this stuff a lot. So what they do all day long is eat and sleep. Okay, they eat and they sleep. And what are they doing? They are storing up energy. All right. And when it's time for the sympathetic drive to come in, and when it's time to run or fight, did you know that elephants and hippopotami and all of these huge animals, they're faster than humans? Okay, because they do is store up energy. They're parasympathetic, rest and digest. They store up energy, and when it's time to move, they move. And that's what we don't understand is that we don't eat right, we don't sleep right, and then we wonder why we don't have any energy the next day. So we need to look at an example of how do these animals survive. They primarily are in a rest and digest, a parasympathetic mode, so that they can handle whatever stress and adapt to whatever stress comes their way. But we think of eating and sleeping as being lazy, but eating and sleeping is how you store up energy so that you can handle the stress of having to adapt to a changing environment. Does that make sense?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, we have to be able to store up energy. So if you don't eat right and if you don't rest, I know you've heard this 1,000 times. Okay, you need to eat, and that's how you restore what your body used up to to go through those stressors. Okay, then the only way you can incorporate that is if you sleep. And if you don't sleep, you're just wasting your time taking a bunch of supplements and even eating right. And the reason why you go to the gym and all this stuff is that did you know that if you can build up your resilience through physical stress, it will also help you build up your resilience to emotional stress. Because remember, your body sees all stress, all disruption of homeostasis as the same. So that's why you go to the gym. You want to build up, a physical stress. But that's why hit the high intensity training is quick stress, quick recovery, quick stress, quick recovery. They're trying to show you this. You are not overwhelmed because cortisol is high. You have anxiety because you have insufficient adaptive capacity. Because you are anxious because you don't know why you feel like you do. You don't know why you're performing like you do. So you have anxiety because you know that you are having trouble adapting. So I feel anxious, my cortisol must be spiking. In reality, you are overwhelmed because your cortisol is no longer resilient enough to handle this load that you were handling before. Okay? So that's the issue is that, and a lot of times what happens is this is why you are on these antidepressants and the anti-anxiety drugs. It's not because that you are it's not because your cortisol is too high. You're anxious because you don't have that ability to respond to your environment. And so if you can fix that, that is, everybody is suffering from anxiety and depression now because there's so much stress. There's so many things going on. And our whole environment is changing so fast. AI, you've got all of the political unrest, all of the global unrest, and all of that, we are having trouble adapting to that. And so if you can build up your adaptive capacity, it can change your life. It can help you to become ageless. So even though all of this stuff is going on, for the last year and a half, I have tried to build up my adaptive capacity so I can handle all of this stuff. All right. So that's what I'm trying to get across to you guys. But see, you cannot manage what you cannot measure correctly. So people are going around and they're getting the blood test and they're going to the Mayo Clinic and getting executive physicals, and they're doing all of the peptides and this and that and anti-aging. And I've been in that world. I've spoken at uh, uh, A4M. I've spoken at all of these places, and it's all of these trends and all of these things. And I've lived long enough to see that all of those things change. They come in style and out of style. And what I've learned that these two books, Are Your Hormones Making You Sick and The Stress Connection, they still have good information in it because it is an ageless blueprint. Okay? Stress is life. And the ageless blueprint is, can I adapt? All civilizations, they've had to adapt. And if they don't adapt, they become extinct. So anyway, so standard blood test. They measure total hormone. We've been talking about that. This is why I do saliva testing. It's a static. It's not going to show you that rhythm. It often says normal when you feel terrible because you're looking at the wrong numbers. You're looking at the wrong place. The saliva panel, that everything you saw was saliva. All right. You're not going to see that in a single cortisol blood draw first thing in the morning, because one, that blood draw is done under stress. You had to get to the doctor's office, you see somebody with a big needle, your cortisol spikes. So you think your morning cortisol is okay. No, it just adapted to that one situation. But if you don't have that, then your cortisol could be flat. So that's why it's so important to do it. You want to know your normal cortisol curve when you're not stressed. So in the saliva, you can measure your free bioavailable hormone. It captures the 4-point curve and it reveals the pattern of adaptation. You want to see, what is my ability to adapt? And what I want to tell you is that this is correctable. It is correctable. And when we come back, I'm just going to try and give you a little bit of the story of my life and show you how I have gone through all of these stages. And through all of these stages, I have had to adapt. And I'm going to tell you, the adaptation process is not easy. It's going to cause you to make some significant decisions about your life and which way your life is going. So at all of these inflection points, a decision has to be made. Am I just going to continue and let this destroy me? Or am I going to make a change and let this enhance my life? Let this stress make me stronger, and don't let it defeat me. And it's not about fighting nature or fighting your biology. It's about understanding it and then trying to enhance it. And that's what we're going to talk about when we come back. All right?
We are going to a quick break, so stay with us as we explore the ageless blueprint right here on W4HC Radio and Talk4 TV. An ancient secret with a modern twist for better health and vitality. Dr. Taylor will be right back. Taking care of your health shouldn't mean taking a handful of pills every day. At Taylor MD Formulations, they create doctor-developed supplements that combine the best natural ingredients so you get the results you need with fewer pills. Taylor MD Formulations is backed by science, designed for real life with real results. Less pills, better health, doctor approved. Shop now at TaylorMDFormulations.com and discover smarter supplements for smarter health. That's TaylorMDFormulations.com. We are back for more of Ageless Blueprint. Once again, let's join Dr. Taylor for more insights and research on the ancient secret to better health and a better life in modern times. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
All right, I'm back, and today we're talking about the real ageless blueprint. And the real ageless blueprint in one sentence is, can you adapt to your changing environment? And that's how you become ageless, and that's how you become productive throughout your lifetime. Can you adapt? And I'm at an adaptive point in my life, and I'm just going to, let's just keep going. All right. I want to make sure we get through all of this. All right. All right. So see, when survival is prioritized, when your cortisol is down, all you can do is survive. You just have sympathetic tone. And what happens is that all non-essential processes get shut down. Okay, so that's what happened when we wrote the book "Are Your Hormones Making You Sick?" We wrote that book. We talked about estrogen, progesterone, and all of that, and then we realized that, hey, wait a minute, sometimes this doesn't work. And what we found out is that, hey, look, when stress is involved, it shuts down everything else that could use up energy. Now, your reproductive system is probably and maybe that's why we noticed it first. It shuts down because you know how much energy is used in your reproductive area. So you just think a man and a woman has enough energy there that in the right situation, it can produce a human. So that takes a lot of energy. So your body shuts down reproduction. It says, we don't need to ovulate. Men, you don't need to make sperm. So we need to shut this down. So fertility rates go down. Now, also, men don't have testosterone, so they don't have the motivation and drive that they usually have. Women don't have estrogen, progesterone in balance like they should have because they didn't ovulate. So now emotions are irregular, their periods are irregular. They start to have all of these issues with their reproductive organs, fibroids, endometriosis, all of that. Then it takes a lot of energy for you to digest your food. That's why you get sleepy after you eat, because all the blood flow goes there in order to pick up nutrition. All right. So that shuts down. So now you're not getting the nutrients that you need because your gut's not working correctly. Now, also, let me tell you this is that what happens is your blood goes there to pick up nutrients, but also the blood has to take nutrients back to the gut because the gut, it's the cells turn over every 5 to 7 days. So if you don't have enough nutrients going back to the gut so it can repair itself, now you have leaky gut. Where did this all start? It started from stress. Now, also, your immune system takes up a huge amount of energy 24/7. It's trying to protect you against cancer, against bacteria, against environmental toxins. So all of this, the immune system is working 24/7. It takes up a lot of energy. Turn it off. So now you're more susceptible to cancers. You're more susceptible to illnesses. And now your brain takes up 20% of all of your energy. And so now that's going to get shut off. Now I'm talking about not the reflex, not the instinct, not the reactive. I'm talking about the deep contemplative, deep thinking that you need to be a high performer. It gets shut down. All right. So now all of this, so now you've got physical problems, you've got reproductive problems, you've got immune system problems, you've got cognitive problems. And this is what drives people to multiple doctors and multiple specialists and multiple procedures. It all started from stress. Okay. 75 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress related complaints or disorders. That is the study that got me wanting to be an expert on stress. All right. This is the key. This is the key to the ACEs blueprint. It's not about more peptides. It's not more. So what I want to do in the ACEs blueprint is help people identify this. And then we go through and we try to correct the upstream cause and not the downstream cause, because this is what makes people be on multiple drugs and all of this. And if we just went upstream a couple of levels, we could eliminate a lot of these things. All right.
Yeah, but
Does that
question.
make sense? Yeah.
It
Okay.
does. They're wondering if you're going to different doctors and they're giving you different medications, can't that cause issues and make things
Yes.
worse?
It's going to make it worse. And everybody knows that. You get on a drug and then it causes problems and you have to get on another drug. And hey, I'll just tell you, one of my friends that I knew, his daughter came by to tell me how he was doing. So he was 78 years old. He's a pharmacist that I know. And what they said was he was in the hospital. They had him on all these drugs. I've forgotten what, but anyway, they thought he was going to die. And the final decision was, let's take him off all these drugs. They took him off all the drugs. Now he's back home. He was near death and they took him off all the drugs. And so, yes, getting on multiple drugs will cause a problem because your body doesn't know how to handle it because it's foreign to the body. All right. So, yes. So you want to avoid going to doctor. That's why I'm saying if you have an issue, you need to, and if this makes sense to you, you need to look at your cortisol curve. That is the key to longevity. Now, this is what I'll show you. Remember, I told you that this can be corrected. So I want to show you. I hope you can see this, but this right here, and I know I'm not trying to get you to be a biochemist, but this is the key. You want more energy to be able to adapt. It's right down here. It's energy at the bottom. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but ATP at the bottom right is the goal. You're trying to make energy. Now, how do you get energy? It's up here. You see at the top, this is you get it from food. Now, let me show you the difference between us and the animals. I told you that the animals, all they do is they eat and they sleep. And so all they're doing is taking in these raw, things, the leaves and whatever grows out there, the fruits, and they're taking this, and because they are in the jungle and everything is not processed, and there's no agricultural companies over there stripping the land. All of these nutrients needed for energy are in that food. We eat all of this processed food, and it doesn't have the basic ingredients that you need to make energy. And that's why you have to eat all these carbohydrates, chips, and because you are not eating the proper nutrients to provide energy. It's as simple as that. And that's why we talk about eating right and resting and exercise. It's really feeding this system. You're giving yourself a little bit of a stress. You're eating, you're refilling this tank every day with the foods that you eat, and then you sleep so that you can incorporate all of this. So when the time comes for you to run away from for the tiger, or to make that big decision, or decide on some really life-changing decision, am I going to get divorced? Am I going to take this job? Am I going to pursue this line of work? Am I going to start the ageless blueprint? You've got to have a clear mind in order to be able to do that. All right. So this is what I'm going to talk about here. All right. So your biological balance sheet. That's what I was telling you. Eventually you will pay the bill. So you have to see, what are my deposits and what are my liabilities? And you need to make sure that this is in balance. But most people have a lot of liabilities. They withdraw, but they don't put in the deposits. And this is the deposit, is you have to eat right. You have to eat the foods that actually have good fats, good carbohydrates, good proteins. The only way you can refill that system is through eating right. And I'm also going to talk about breathing right. That's about meditation. That's another whole one. Another whole podcast, another whole video. All right. So how did this show up as leadership decline? So this is what I'm really, really want everyone to be a high performer. And being a high performer doesn't mean you have to be a CEO of $1 billion company. Being a high performer is being a high performance dad, a high performance mom, a high performance friend, a high performance employee, a high performance entrepreneur, a high performance speaker. All of this is high performance. Okay, is how can you live your life to the highest level of performance for as long as possible? But what happens is you start to make bad decisions. Okay, because your frontal lobe of your brain that requires 20% of your energy doesn't have a lot to draw from. So you make bad decisions. Your emotions, it's very hard for you to control your emotions because your frontal cortex is what inhibits your activity. So people find that they get addictions and they get cravings because they can't handle their emotions because their frontal lobe has gone offline. You have poor recovery because you don't allow yourself to recover. We think that resting is a sign of laziness and not a sign of preparation. Okay? When you rest your mind through meditation, when you calm yourself down before a big decision, that is allowing your brain to recover. I use this Muse band here because it tells me when my brain has recharged. Okay? I have something on here that tells me what my recovery is. That's why people use the aura rings and all that stuff. That's important. You want to know, did I recover so that I can handle the next day's stress much better? You get reduced creativity. You can't think. I meditate. So after I meditate, my creative juices start to come in. I meditated before I started this podcast. So that my
Dr.
creative juices, yes, go ahead.
All right. I have a question here, and this is a good question.
Okay, great.
At the level of performance, your idea of high performance and someone else's idea of high performance are different. So
Exactly.
whose level of high performance should they go by?
You
Their
should go
own
by
or others?
No, that's the problem. You don't see a lot of times, and this is what social media, we judge our high performance based on somebody else's high performance. That's one of the problems. We're comparing and competing. My high performance is totally different from their high performance, and I can't perform at a high level like that person is. So suppose I judge my high performance based on Tom Brady throwing a football, and I can't throw a football as accurate as he can. I'm going to be depressed and anxious and all this because I am trying to match. I'm trying to do his high performance. No, I believe everybody has a talent and they have certain things that they can do better than anybody else. And the key is to be able to identify that and to maximize it. And when your cortisol is down, you can't do it. You can't decide what is your high performance. You haven't recovered. You don't have any creativity to think about what is my talent and how can I maximize it. You don't have enough energy to even think like that. So that's why I'm saying you have to have a normal amount of cortisol and energy for all of this stuff to work. And if you're not eating or bringing that energy in, also, in our office, if because it's so hard to get good food in a big city like this, we do IV therapy where everything in this, I'll show you, everything in here, we can put in an IV and we can do it the easy way, okay, just to help people to recover. Okay, so these are the things that all these IV clinics are popping up, but most of these IV clinics don't have all of these ingredients, but that is another way to build it up. So this is correctable. And if we do it through IVs and a few little supplements, you can recover. So I want to tell you what happened. So, okay. So let me just tell you I'll tell you kind of my life cycle and where I am now. All right. So first, OB, all of this stuff. I'm at my high performance. I'm doing C-sections. I'm building a practice. I became chief resident in my residency. All of this stuff happened. So now I'm at this high level. So then what happened is that it was hard for me to recover from getting up in the middle of the night. So that was probably when I had that middle of the road thing. And so, I was like, hey, I have to stop. I stopped delivering babies in 2006 and started doing functional medicine. And then I got so interested in functional medicine, I wanted to be a high performer. So I started speaking. I started flying all around and I was going to Australia and all these places. And after about 5 or 6 years, it wore me out. And I'll tell you, when I hit that flat line, I was in Las Vegas. I had just left my office. I flew out there that next morning. I was supposed to do a presentation I've done 1,000 times. And I looked at those slides and it looked like they had changed my slides. My total frontal cortex had gone offline. I didn't know that, but that's what had happened. The people who had heard me speak in the past, they knew something was wrong. They thought I had a stroke. They called my wife. I went back home and I stayed there for 6 months. And I'm telling you, my mind was a blank. I was still going to the office, but I'm telling you, I was listening to patients and I didn't understand what they were saying. It took me 6 months to recover. Okay. And so then I recovered and I said, okay, I'm going to start doing these conferences in Atlanta where I don't have to speak. I don't have to travel. So I did that, and that became very stressful because it's very hard to put together those conferences. Then in 2016, my sister passed away, and I said, okay, I can't do it anymore. And then year and a half ago, I said, I don't like not being a high performer. How can I be a high performer again? So I did that reality creator. I totally changed my life. I started meditating. I started living life differently. My relationship, I had to come to an inflection point and decide What am I going to do? So this is what I'm saying. So this is the decision you have to make. Do I spend the next 30 years declining, or do I take control now? And that's what you have to decide. Okay. Am I going to just let my life fade away? That's what I had to do last year. People were asking me, are you going to retire? Are you going to do this? So I'm like, why would I retire? What I have to do is take all of this information that I've learned over the last 25, 30 years. I want to share it, but I have to become a new person and able to do it. I have to adapt. I have to adapt to podcast and to TikTok and to using Chat GPT and doing all of these things. If I'm going to continue to be a high performer, I am going to have to adapt because people aren't flying around to conferences anymore. They're not doing the things that I was doing in the past. But here's what I will tell you. The information is ageless. I just had to adapt to how I delivered this information. I've done it through being in my office. I've done it through books. I've done it through flying around speaking. I've done it through not flying around and speaking here. And now I'm adapting to this point here. And I'm hoping that I increase my longevity by understanding how to adapt. So I do not push myself anymore. When it's time to rest, if it's 9:30 and I'm sleepy, I go to bed. Okay. If it's in the middle of the day and I need a nap, I will take a nap. If it's before I'm about to do a podcast, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to meditate for 10 or 15 minutes to calm my brain down so that my frontal lobe can get back online so that I can be creative and say the things that I'm supposed to say here. So that's kind of my life story, you guys. It may be boring. So I I I consider myself to be able to still perform high at age 65 because I understand the biology of high performance. So yes, you're exactly right. Do not try to live up to someone else's high performance standards. That's a lot of times what we do as parents. We have these high performance standards for our kids, but that's not what their real high performance is. Okay, we try and push them to be a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief. And these kids now, they don't want these traditional jobs. They're being creative. They're making up new jobs. And I'm telling you, if you don't adapt, you're going to be like the dinosaurs. You will become extinct. So I'm trying to not become extinct on the medical information high performance pipeline. Okay, I've been to the mountaintops. I've been through the valleys. I've been to the mountaintops. I've been through the valleys. That's what life is. And in those valleys, you have to either get stronger or you have to adapt. Those are your two decisions. You got to, and if you want to get stronger, you got to build yourself up physically. You have to build yourself up emotionally, and you have to make sure that that cortisol curve is going to allow you to adapt. All right. So we got like a minute and a half, Rebel. But I really want to push this home. This is the key. So longevity. Let me do this long. Longevity is the capacity to adapt. And again, over a year and a half ago, I said I'm going to take a longevity course. And as I went through the longevity course, I was like, wait a minute, they're talking about the stress connection. Okay, longevity is not the absence of stress; it is the preservation of the body's ability to resolve stress. So if you can get the data and you find out the rhythms, you can change that rhythm. So this is it. This is longevity medicine, is your ability to adapt, and it all starts from cortisol. So I would invite you to join my school group. You go in there, you can get the information you need, you can get the testing you need, and you join ACE's blueprint. And we can help you through longevity by making sure you can maintain your adaptive capabilities. All right. Anything else, you guys?
We have a piggyback on that last question
Mm-hmm.
about high performance. They want to be clear. If you think you're at high performance, but someone else, like a boss, thinks you're not at high performance, what level should you go with? Your own, correct? Like if your boss thinks you're not performing as high,
Well,
how do
you know
deal with
what?
that?
I would say you self-reflect. you can say to yourself, is my boss right? Maybe he is. And so maybe you do need to do the cortisol. Maybe my boss is right. Let me see what my cortisol curve is. Maybe that's why I don't like my boss anymore. It's not because he's demanding more from me. It's just that I can't meet the demand anymore. Okay. So that's what I would tell you. If someone is noticing that you're not performing at the level that they're used to seeing you perform, then investigate it. I would say it's just like if somebody said, "Hey, look, you got a rash." You wouldn't say, "Oh, that's not." You say, "Oh, well, let me see. Let me investigate the rash." So somebody else noticed something on you, then that you didn't notice. Then you need to investigate it. So maybe the boss is telling you, "Hey, I'm not asking you to do more. It just seems to be harder for you to get it done."
And just to put it out there, ladies and
Mhm.
gentlemen, if you're doing the job and you've been doing, but the boss keeps piling more stuff on you,
Yeah, that's all.
that that
Yeah,
needs to be addressed as well.
yeah,
Look,
yeah. So
when Dr. Taylor,
yeah,
he'll be here saying that.
it's adapting. You can either fight or flight. Okay, you can either fight it, build up your resilience and fight it, or you can leave. You just say, "No, he's being unfair." Okay, I'm just as good as I've always been, but he's being unfair. So that's the fight or flight. So it when if you're rested up, you can make that good decision. You can say, "No, hey, look, I know I'm as good as I ever been. This guy is just crazy." Okay, and so then you have to leave. So that would be the difference. I know we're over, so I'll see you guys next week. But hey, join Ageless Blueprint School. This is what we're going to talk about: is longevity, hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, to get you performing at a high level. All right, so see you guys next week.
Thanks for joining Dr. Taylor today. If you missed any part of this show, just check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Ageless Blueprint is every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. Together, we discover the ancient secrets to better health through science and spirituality made for modern times. Until then, feel free to check out agelessblueprintpodcast.com and TaylorMDFormulations.com for more information.